Okay, it's on, so I turn it off.
First thing we will have is the appointment of Rebecca Reed. Come up, Becky. Carol will swear you in.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of village trustee
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of village trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Okay, the next thing I have is, I want to apologize for something I said last week at the budget meeting, and we'll move forward. I'm very sorry I said what I said, and I'd take it all back if I could, but I can't, so we'll move on with the meeting. Revitalization report, Melissa.
Would you prefer that I report from back here, or would you like me to come up where maybe, so
Why don't you
people
come
have...
over here,
Okay.
we can hear you a little better.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak to the board about the revitalization project.
Yep.
I sent you all a pretty lengthy email, last week, and there is just so much to talk about that I thought, instead of trying to do everything, I would, both of you had mentioned that you had questions on the DNH project, so I would focus on the two grant projects that deal with the DNH tonight, and then hopefully we can sit down in either in a work
Yeah.
session or another board meeting to go through everything else.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good. Sounds good.
Super. So the first thing I thought I would do, if you don't mind, because we do have a couple of new trustees, is to just kind of back up to like the 30,000-foot level and take a broad look at what's been going on for revitalization of Rouses Point. I'm sorry, hard not coming back to somebody. And then get into the specifics. And if you can bear with me, I was telling Gail before the meeting, I know before I even start that people's eyes are going to start to glaze over because there's so much detail. But if you can bear with me, I'll try to go through it, and then I'll be glad to answer your questions and any questions you'd like me to take. Okay?
Very good.
I don't know how many of you will recognize this document, but this is the downtown and waterfront revitalization plan that the village developed over the years 2004, 2005. It was adopted by the board in 2006. I know some of you were there down in St. Patrick's basement or here as we had an evening meeting for the businesses, as we took public input and came up with what the plan would be for Rouses Point's future revitalization, specifically the downtown and the waterfront. And the one thing I wanted to just draw your attention to is that both of the projects we're going to talk about tonight were included in the downtown and waterfront plan. The restoration of the railway station as a key gateway to the village, and also the Pratt Street reconstruction project. In fact, one of the images that we got was actually Pratt Street with green space and streetlights and what was hoped to be a connection between the train station and the downtown and the waterfront. So that just to give you a sense of where the origin of these projects was. It came out of, like all the other work we've done, came out of the downtown and waterfront plan. And you know, as we were doing, we started that plan, as I said, well, there was a steering committee that started in 2003. We worked in 2004, we worked through 2005, and then right in the middle of the process came the announcement that Wyeth was closing. And you know, there was a real taking of stock at that point by the current board. Do you go forward, or do you say, well, we need to stop everything? And the decision that was made by the board in 2005 and 2006 was, no, this is the best option available to Rouses Point to move forward, so they decided to continue with the effort. Happily, that's something that's been validated by what's gone on regionally. The region has said that a lot of the things that Rouses Point said it wanted to do make sense not just for us, but for the whole North Country. I came to you all last year when the regional council was looking for grant applications and talked to you about putting in a couple of applications, and the board went ahead and submitted for a micro enterprise grant to help local businesses, and also the grant to, hi Jan, connect, again, the project from the plan, connect Pratt Street to the train station, to the downtown with the street lighting and so on. So it's kind of neat to see that that has been, it's not just Rouses Point that's coming up with this. Now, I would argue that Rouses Point is in a more difficult position than a lot of other communities, because we're in a place that's unusual in that our major employer has been announced that they're leaving and is slowly scaling back to the point where there were 1,800 jobs 10 years ago, there are 300 jobs now. And we know that within a couple of years, there very likely may not be any. So this town has a real challenge in that we're all facing that. Luckily, we also have an advantage that a lot of other communities don't have. We have several. We have the lake, we're on the border. I gave you all a packet. I wanted you to see this, that Rouses Point and our lake is featured. This is the home page of Clinton County's destination planning effort. This is when you click on Clinton County Destination Plan, this is what you get. And those of you out in the crowd can't see it, but the top image is our pier. It was selected by the people who came and did that plan as the key thing they wanted people to see when they clicked on Clinton County Destination. Egret, the company that did the plan for North Country Chamber, again, this is a big regional economic development effort. They fell in love with Rouses Point. I met them at Lakeside Coffee. They got it. You can ask Chris Douche, she serves on the committee. Anybody else that has dealt with them, they see Rouses Point as the jewel of Clinton County. And so you can see how that's featured here. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of sense that it's not just Rouses Point that thinks it can do these things. The next handout that you have is the vision. This is right from, the North Country winning $103 million plan. This is what they passed out to us that day in Albany when they gave us our award. This is the vision for the plan. And if you take a look at what the North Country said its vision was, there are a couple of bullets that you really kind of jump out for Rouses Point. Elevate global recognition of the region as one of the special places on the planet to visit, live, work, and study. And activate tourism as a driver to diversify our economy. So, you can look at the others, and it's talking about strategic clusters and getting entrepreneurs to start businesses. That's how you get your micro-enterprise funding. But it's not just Rouses Point that thinks that tourism is going to be a huge driver of the North Country economy. So that, I just wanted to show you that. And of course, your projects, this will never leave my hands, they'll pry it out of my hands. They handed it to me in Albany, and if you go to the first page of the North Country 103 Million Award, North Country, Clinton County, Village of Rouses Point, Microenterprise Program, $200,000. Implementing the Rouses Point Downtown and Waterfront Plan, $125,000 from the Department of State. And that's the project we'll talk about again, about the Pratt Street connection and finishing the railway station site. So, it's something, I'm super proud of what the North Country team did with this, and also at Rouses Point, the real cash that came into the region is more like 50 than 103, because there's bond cap and there's tax credits. But out of the 50 million that came to the North Country, Rouses Point got 325,000. That's not a bad take for a little town. So the reason I think that has happened is that we've established ourselves as a community that's kind of taking control of its own destiny and working to try to replace the jobs that are lost in life. And it's not a one-to-one replacement. Tourism will never replace the good manufacturing jobs. But it's something that we have. And again, it's not just us that thinks we can do it. I'm going to get into the D&H project now and give you a little bit of history of that. This is the next thing you have in front of you. Again, as I said, the railway station was identified as a project in the plan. The Historical Society had been working years before I got involved in the village. They convinced the board to take ownership of the building, and they tried, how can we ever restore this building? I remember sitting in Mary's living room with Dick Baker in January of 2005 and said, okay, the plan's rolling along, I'm gonna see what I can do with the railway station. And we tried. We wrote one of the few grants I've ever written we didn't get. That didn't work out. We thought we might be able to do the roof. We worked with the guys trying to figure out who could do the roof. The chimneys needed to be done. The supports needed to be done. There was just no easy way to start. But fortunately, there's somebody who really cares about the connection to Canada, sitting down in Plattsburgh, who has a fair amount of clout, and that would be Gary Douglas. And he said, I don't want the people coming in from Montreal to be greeted at that international gateway with that beautiful station falling apart. So he put the project on his hot list of North Country priorities, took me down to Washington in 2007 and 2008. If you want to take a look, you'll find our station on the first page of the hot list, Rouses train station. Restoration and redevelopment of the train station, creating a museum, functional space which Homeland Security didn't end up needing, and enhanced Amtrak station. And you know what? It took a couple years, but in 2008, the word came to the village, hey, put a transportation enhancement grant in, because we think you're gonna do well funding-wise. So the board sent me off, I went to the workshops, and came back and said, oh, this is out of my league, because this is a kind of grant I've never done before. And this is one where there's no margin for error. We need to make sure we get enough money to complete the project. So the board hired Barton and Judas in 2008 to do the grant application, and we submitted it. Now, when we submitted it, it was still 2008, and it was before the crash in 2008. So we applied for an $832,000 project, and we knew we'd have $166,000 in match to come up with for that project, because 80-20, getting 80% of your project funded, was about the best you could hope for at that point. Well, the national economy went into big trouble, shall we say, and all of a sudden there was stimulus money that they were trying to spend on shovel-ready projects. And they called us and said, look, we're holding a TEP grant, but you can also use ARA money if you want. And I said, well, okay, what does that mean? No match. You'll give you the whole 832.5. Talked to the mayor, talked to the board said, absolutely, it's a dream, we couldn't even, somebody's gonna give us, Mary, back in January 2005, somebody's gonna give us $832,000 to do that station, just too good to be true. And then Congressman McHugh, who had not gone off to the Department of the Army yet, came through with $95,000 in an earmark for us. So we ended up with over $920,000. Now, if you had told me that with $920,000 it would be hard to get the project done, I would not have believed it. But it has been. It's been a real challenge because of the cost of working with this federal funding. So where we are now on the D&H project, we put it out to bid, the bids came in about 30% high. We met with the board, we had a conference call, we came up with a revised plan to try to bring the cost down. And some of that is eliminating some of the very painstaking removal, cleanup, restoration of the bead board. We were able to go ahead with replacement windows instead of trying to restore the ones that were there. All of this is to try to cut down the cost for contractors. The Historical Society came through with another $32,000 in funding to the project, and we were able to line up some more IEP money for the mechanicals, the air conditioning, the ventilation, and the windows, and some insulation. And so that's where we stand now. So if I pass the board to take a look at this email that I sent you, I guess it's over a month ago now, so some of you didn't get it, but maybe Bob or Brian, it's in your packet that I just passed out. So here's where we stand now. The plans have been reviewed again by DOT. They're making final adjustments, and I'll be coming back to you to ask for permission to go out to bid. But what I'm doing at this point, because we have been told, they've never given us an end date for the funding. They gave us an original one, but then they backed it up, but that we will not have time to bid it again. So what I'm doing now is working with DOT, and I need to meet with you, I need to meet with the village about this, for kind of our fail-safe fallback no other option position, which would be to remove additional items from the contract, knowing that then we have to finish them up. So I need to meet with you about what you prefer to do on that. I know we have a great group of volunteers that are ready to step in, but again, ultimately, it's the board that has the contract and the board that has the responsibility. So I want to be sure that, you know, you're comfortable with what's being asked of you. Again, fortunately, you have an extremely talented group of people that work for this village that I think could step up and do a lot of what needs to be done. So I'll need to, you know, work with you on that.
Yep.
If you look at the second page of the packet with the email, that's the one that breaks down our projected costs and our funding sources. So behind this are just the civil, the mechanical, the plumbing, the electrical estimates, because we have to put this out, because the Wix law has to go out before contracts. Just adding to the joy and cost of doing this. And you can see, I totaled the civil, the plumbing, the mechanical, the electrical, and you're looking at, our best guess, $775,000 for the bids. You can compare that to what we have for funding, $590 from the stimulus money, $75 from HUD, the Historical Society money, the IEP money. And we got, you know, on paper, the funding is there. But again, I want to make sure that we can deduct out what we need so the board can get this project done. Okay, so, you know, maybe we can plan on having a work session on that sometime quite soon, because the sooner we get this out to bid, the better. Okay?
All right.
Do you have any, maybe it's a good time, let me take a breath and take you a little break from my voice. Any questions about the D&H, the restoration project itself? Because I'm gonna move into that next project, and maybe we can try to avoid confusion on the two.
Well, the things I had in this here was, the $775,000. Is there gonna be more engineering service charge for that?
I already subtracted that out.
Okay.
Okay, you,
Architects and all that?
we have a contract for $248,000 and change for architectural, engineering, and construction management services. I pulled that out, so we don't have to worry about that. That's already been deducted from the funding.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's your, you took that out for your salary too?
No, that is not in there. No, that is not in there. I did not include the, there was $19,000 in the HUD grant to pay for me for the project management and grant administration. That's not in there, so that would be above and beyond. And that's, the connection with that is the EPF grant that you applied for last year, the one to do the rest of the train station.
Yeah.
That one does have funding that could be used to pay my hours, if the board chooses to go that way.
Okay.
Okay?
And we got a problem, because Champlain Telephone is not don't look like they're gonna get on, because they don't have the money and some stuff. So the street lights we have purchased and everything else, do they have to be up this year?
I don't think so. I would not
No.
expect, typically no.
All right.
What we would have to do, and I know you probably haven't even had a chance to look at it, I just emailed the contract to you this morning.
Oh.
Andy LaBruzzo, a lot of you know because he's been to our meetings, our Department of State rep just emailed it to me when I was on vacation last week. So what we would need to do is sit down with Andy. They are under pressure, I've heard, because this is this regional council money.
Mhm.
The Cuomo administration is tracking how fast this gets done.
Yeah.
And as a region, we're getting graded on how well we implement this. That, our points last time were like 60% was the plan, this time it's 60% implementation. So we have to show progress. But you know, usually you have time, you have to get your contract, you have to go through design and approvals. You guys are ahead of the game with that. But I would think, I would be surprised if DOS wouldn't work with us on that.
There's really not much we can do with telephone company, come aboard with us and so we can move the poles up. And Brian's got, got to put in 5-foot sidewalks, Brian?
Yes.
Handicap sidewalks and everything else. I mean, right now, if we had to put them up, it's impossible.
Right, so, you know, so I do think that there probably is time on that. Usually our projects, I wish I could say we got the grant and we got it built that year, but they don't out there tell me I'm lying. So it usually takes a while
Yeah.
to do these things.
Is that a different grant, though, the lights from the
Okay,
DNH?
from IEP.
It is, it's
Okay.
that, it's the next grant to kind of finish up the railroad project.
And, we got the money from IEP, they're after me to, for the insulation and the ceiling and the windows.
We have a meeting tomorrow, they're gonna call us tomorrow and, see kind of what the direction is. Because we told them, we really don't know what's gonna happen, do we have a meeting, we have a board decision, and
Well, just so you'll feel better, you have a commitment letter for $168,000 from IEP for this project. So I had them put that in writing.
you know,
So I can send that to you, that would make you feel better, because again, the only thing that the IEP, there's some uncertainty, because in order to get reimbursed, we have to have contractor invoices to give to Mike Lyons to get the cash back. So we're figuring there's no problem with getting enough of those to get back the money, but that is that's a gray area, because it depends on what the invoice is coming at from the contractor, so.
No, we gotta show that, we have to show that something is being done. What says we can't start by getting the building reconstructed, and then when we're ready with Champlain Telephone to get the street starting to go, then go with that. What's the difference with having to get one started and not doing part of the project, which would be starting the building to get done, then go to the street later on, when it's more fundable?
Right, well, and Brad, I think you'd be very wise to go that way, because I believe that the end date is gonna be early in 2013 for this, all your stimulus money. So, we need to make sure we cover the village as best we can with, again, that fail-safe option, that enough can be pulled out to be able to do the project. Because, as I said when I told you about this grant application, this is one there's no fooling around with. The village, in order to sign the contract, you had to pass this resolution that guarantees that the village will cover the extra cost to get the project done. So that, this has been a serious one right from the beginning. We're not working with our friends down at DOS, because the state has the money from the federal government, and somebody, it has to be completed. So that's why we want to make sure we do it as we're very careful. We have a fail-safe out on this.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Up there, the underground, underneath the building and stuff like that, you're gonna have to put some type of drainage in there. Now, that's not in the contract or
No,
nothing.
that was-
The
that
village
was-
is gonna have to do that, and that's gonna be very costly.
But they're not gonna have to do that as part of this project. And it's been looked at by architects and engineers, and it's not required, Benny. The project advisory committee, we never even talked about the design. You should be fine with it the way it is. And if you had to do drainage later, you could do that.
Well,
key
right now, all the water goes into the cellar.
Well, you'd be surprised how dry it can be sometimes. Because I know the
Well, like
guys
I
who
said,
checked
there's a
on
lot
it.
of water in that cellar right now.
So,
Full stop. And
right, but you don't
and
want
not
to
only
add.
that, your volunteers,
Right.
the DOT said that you can't have volunteers in there because of lead paint.
Well, what we would have to do is, that's what we have to figure out. We have to have the
So, I mean-
abatement, we have to have the abatement work done. Then you can get the volunteers and the village crew, whoever else you need in there.
Yeah, because the village crew was gonna tear down the end of that building and stuff
Right.
to save the money and stuff like that.
Right.
And they said, no, you couldn't touch that.
Not until it's all abated, that's right. So, again, the village of Rouses Point has this contract with New York State. So we all need to put our heads together to figure out how to protect the village so this project can get done and you can get your money back. The one thing I will say, they are very good about reimbursing, because we've expended $165,000 so far, and we have 164 and change back. So they're very prompt, the cash comes back. They're not like our friends at the Department of State who are reliant on the mortgage transfer tax and have to wait for the money to come in. This is stimulus money, it's sitting there waiting to come back when we spend it, so. So my recommendation again would be get all the people that need to be in the room to make this decision, put all the information out and figure out how to get this done best for you, okay? Okay, so, then the next project, is the one that we talked about, that was one of your regional council EPF awards. It is, and again, the grant contract, I can email to all of you, I think you'll get your hard copy bumper next week from DOS. Okay, and this is the grant that was kind of designed to finish the job. I think part of the reason it got funded was when I wrote it, I wrote about completing the work at the train station, because we already had to take the site work, the landscaping out of the contract. We did that before, we put that as an ad alternate last time. So I knew back in September that we were gonna be looking for this money. And we have had such good luck working with Department of State and using the electric crew's work and the DPW's work, putting in the underground electric, putting in the streetlights as match for our grants. It brought in, it's gotta be, I mean, it's 300, 400,000, 500,000 on Montgomery Street as match. And so I said, okay, well, why don't we take advantage of that and see if we can get some cash to finish the site work. So the board decided to put in the application. We also put in money for my services or anybody else you choose to either hire or contract with to help you with the project management and grant administration and what gets lumped as revitalization project advancement. If you look at my report that I sent along with the memos, you know, we are fortunate, when we hitched our start at the Department of State back in 2002, it was definitely a wise move because they understand that for small communities, it's hard to keep up with this stuff. You know, unless you have somebody sitting around the village office twiddling their thumbs looking for something to do, and I've never seen that person in the village office, somebody has to step up and do this work. So we put in about $35,000 for a couple years of project management services. The beauty of it, it's not just to administer this grant. As I explained to you, as you look through the memo, you'll see it referenced again and again. You want to do the micro enterprise. This can pay for my services to help out the consultant we hired to do the micro enterprise. It can help you with your other open grants. So it's there for you as a tool. And it's paid for over the years. I look out at this crowd, I see a few faces of people that I worked with when they came into the village. For me to be able to meet with new businesses and guide them to resources and keep things coordinated with the chamber and the development corporation and the regional council and that all of that. So that is there. Now, again, the board will have to decide if it wants to proceed with this grant. And I would recommend maybe, again, getting the key people who need to be part of that decision. Get Angelo Gruzo on the phone and share your concerns and see if he feels that we can work this out. Okay?
Yeah, I guess we can set up a conference call. Yeah, that's what it, well, you know, just, if we, I'm just saying, I don't know about the rest of the board, but if we have to go to bond, we're not doing that. We just can't borrow any more money, we're so far in, that's not funny,
Right. Well,
you know?
you know, this one is very flexible. You can do the work that fits within the grant. The D&H station is another source. That one, I think, we'll have to take every step we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Hopefully the contractor's coming down a lot better than they did last time.
I hope so. We listened to what they said and tried to add as much uncertainty as we could. Because it made them nervous. The restoration, trying to preserve all the historic aspects, it made them nervous.
You figure it'll go out for a bid here.
Well, we'll need to get from you what you want to list as additional ad alternates. I'd like to get DOT on the phone, make sure we're all on the same page. If we were gonna put out to bid what they've reviewed right now, it could go out to bid probably right after your next board meeting if you wanted to authorize it. But we need to make sure we're all set and comfortable. And I mean, really,
I thought the bids already went out at the end of February.
no, the plans went to DOT on February 22nd. We haven't put it back up for bid yet. We haven't been authorized to do that yet, so, by DOT, they're finishing up their review, so.
Is the grant requiring historical accuracy? Or is that?
Well, because you're using federal money, anytime you use federal or state grant money on the National Register Historic Building, there's this department down in, well, actually it's out in, the State Historic Preservation Office. They have to approve the use of that money. So we had to get everything we did through their approval. We put it out to bid the first time the way the architect wanted, with as much restoration, keeping the windows, keeping the beadboard, keeping the trim. When we had the proof of, look, it's too expensive this way, we got SHPO and DOT and said, something has to give, and that's when they allowed us to alter the plan and do more replacement rather than restoration. So SHPO has already approved the new plan, that's done, DOT wouldn't approve till they approve, so.
These bids that you're doing for this building, do they all have to pay state wages?
Prevailing wage,
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
yes, because it's
That
federal,
tells you right there.
federal and state money, it's all prevailing wage, yeah. And there are a gazillion forms, and plus this is our money, so there are extra, there's doing DBE, there's women and minorities requirements, it's what, I mean, it is expensive to do business in New York State using federal
Yeah,
funds.
right now, you know, from people that get $40 an hour to $125 an hour when you go to state contract, you know, that's where all your money's going for the building.
They-
Contractors are,
Or they do for contract, the wages. Doesn't that stay with what our boys are getting paid? They go-
No.
No, it's the union, the prevailing union wage rate. And you know, then it's the Wicks law too. I mean, we should be able to get a GC and one contractor do the job, but you can't. You have to, even a project this is relatively small, has to go out to 4 contracts, which again, just drives up the cost, because everybody's mobilizing,
Yeah.
but it is, you know, again, when you get the $920,000, these are the hoops you jump through. You take off a third off the top for the engineers and for me to do the paperwork, because it all goes, you know, goes with the territory. But you're still left with, hopefully, you know, we chunk change, so we didn't have to do the building, so.
Anyone else got any questions for Melissa?
Hey, I do. So Melissa, did I hear you say that we are obligated, we are under contract to make this happen?
We are. In the
So-
state, the contract that the village signed with the state back in September 2009.
So as we keep rebidding and increasing the cost of engineering, planning, and all that other stuff, that's chipping away at the money that you have available for restoration. And so I agree with Mr. Mayor that puts us in a hard spot where we're gonna be forced to go to bond to finish this project, potentially.
Or we can, you know, there is the option of doing what can be done locally ourselves. The one thing I will say, the board authorized back in November $2,500 more for the engineer for the rebid. We squeezed a lot of work out of them, which is very reasonable in light of the fact that, you know, they gave us a design that was more expensive than it should have been. So I have no problem, we believe me, it's been.
Because the last time I looked at the numbers, it looked like it was gonna be extremely close as far as making it with this project, what was left out of that grant.
Well, right, and, you know, we look at the funding and it is, there's about $7,000 slush, which is why I want to try to identify some additional fallback positions for the village.
what you're saying is, if you get enough residents to come in here and do that building, you ain't gotta pay those wages. Is that what you're saying?
The things that we do ourselves,
Exactly.
we do not have to. So what we have to do is we're not allowed to cherry pick once the bids are in. We've got to specify, okay, so if the way it's written right now, if we can afford the slate roof and finishing the building, that's the first option. If we can't afford the slate roof, then we go to the asphalt roof and we start going through we have already pulled interior trim and doors as an ad alternate. We've pulled the deck, the composite deck out on the platform side. We've pulled out painting as things that we identified that we thought, well, easiest things for volunteers to do. I think what we need to do is, again, look at what the volunteers can supply, look at what the village forces could do, and pull a few more out, so we're then within that margin. Because yes, I believe, and I have to check with DOT, I believe the village could submit for the material, and we would not have to pay. And you know, when you pay a contractor, it's $30.
Oh, it's the labor cost is going.
That's right. It's 2-to-1 labor to materials. So that, you know, I think that's my goal.
So you're saying we could buy the material they need?
I believe we could. If we had cash and the village was gonna do the work, I believe it would be a legitimate reimbursable expense of the grant. That's something I need to find out. I just crossed this bridge with DOT today because I got back from vacation and had an email, there's not time to put this out for bid one more time, which is the first time that they've ever given me drop dead. So I emailed back and said, okay, then we need to talk because we figure out what else we're gonna do.
Is it reimbursable as we go, or do we have to pay it up front and wait for reimbursement on the other end?
You do pay up front, and then we submit for reimbursement. It's been pretty good, it's been within a month. Typically, by the time the village pays the bill, we get the reimbursement submitted, it's been coming back pretty quickly.
Anyone else would like to ask Melissa?
What would happen if the village refuses to go to bond on this?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I know, but with the taxes the way they are, and the economy in this village the way it is, you might be talking about a couple of $1,000s to go to bond or whatever. What if they absolutely refuse, if it goes up to a bond issue and it's defeated? Where are we at?
I don't know, John, I don't have an answer for you. Again, you have the contract with the state, so would the state, I think what they would be looking for is what can be done in-house to get it done. I mean, that's why we want to be able to make sure we can get enough done here locally, so that we don't end up in that position. Because that's worst case, it's worst case for the village, it's worst case for DOT. Neither party in this contract wants to see that happen, I'm quite sure.
I understand what you're saying, but you realize that our village crew is pretty busy as it is. You keep talking about using our people for all this.
Whoa, time out. This is not, I have no contract with the state of New York. The village has the contract. I'm just trying to identify the best option.
But you're representing us, so what do you think?
About, I'm sorry.
We're paying you to represent us. What would
Yes.
happen if we refused to do a bond?
I can't predict that for you because I don't know. I'm not aware of any other municipality that has told the state, we're not gonna pay you back. I know what they would want, actually, I do have the first answer. They would want you to pay back the money that has been spent so far.
They haven't sent us anything yet, have they?
Oh, we have $164,000 that's been reimbursed. They would want that back.
What did we spend that on?
That's on the engineering and the design. So I know they would want that back.
Well, we might have to do
What
that.
the legal
I don't think
action-
if it goes up to the voters in this village, that that's anything, another bond issue is gonna pass. I don't believe it.
So what you're saying, Melissa, is if, like John's saying, if there's a bond, and we need to borrow 200,000 more. If people don't do that, we're still gonna have to come up with 163 to pay back to the state
Yeah.
anyways.
And
So either way, we're gonna come up with a minimum of 163,000 either way.
all I can report to you, Joe, is the information that
I'm
I
just
have.
asking.
Because this is really asking me to dust off my crystal ball.
Sure.
I'm not really, I would really recommend a call with DOT on this, so, if you want to get these questions answered. I do know that, I was told that the money would have to be paid back, but the resolution the board passed, the contract says they will finish the project. So, what would happen, I don't know.
What are we looking at for a time frame for the DOT to see the plan, to see the plans and approve plans? Yeah.
They have them, Brad, and they have reviewed and pretty much okayed. They're into the language tweaking right now. I expect we'll have the go-ahead from them for what they've been reviewing very soon. We need to get the revisions back to them that they requested, but we're gonna delay the process a bit ourselves to look at, our options. At least that would be my recommendation to the board. To then say to them, we wanna add a few deductions to that bid.
164,000, you said?
164, 616, 57 is what we've been reimbursed so far.
If we do some deductions, will we have to get a new plan made up and then send back to them, or just deduct it, can we deduct it then?
That's a really good question. Thank heavens, no. It's just a matter of adjusting the language on the request for bids. And I have a copy of where that stands now. I'll get that email to you. This is where it stands. So where we have the option one, it's so convoluted. The bidder must submit a bid for both options. Option one is the roof, option two, asphalt roof. Then they have to spell out how you award, and it's mind-numbing. We would add to this list. We would say, okay, and if the bid comes in at this amount, we will add in this work. So basically what we do is we put out the totally stripped down project, and then if the bids come in under our money, we add back in whatever we want to do least, I guess, would be the way I would say it. Pick the worst thing that you don't want to do. I thought painting as the first thing that the village would probably like to get done. And then the composite decking, which is not, I don't think it's a bad project at back, so. Okay, so we would have to redo this and give it to DOT, and I think they would help us do that.
When does all the work have to be completed by?
I believe February 2013.
Oh,
Very aggressive timeline.
yeah, that's,
September of 2009.
What's the end of that?
And actually, they pushed it back, our money was supposed to go in 3 years, and we all know it didn't happen. So then they extended it.
so we're pretty much kind of stuck. It's do or pay it back.
I'm afraid you can certainly ask your questions, but you have a contract with the state. The other thing I think that is going to be an issue is that the grant application we filed did agree to a $166,000 match from the village. So, they transferred it to our money for us, but that's what you submitted. And so, that also, I think, would probably be an issue.
That adds to the number?
We ended up not having to do the local match because we got the full
Yeah,
amount
but
for
you're
the
just saying
stimulus.
you have to pay that match back. So if you got, what did it say, for instance, 190,000, and then the match, they want that back, now you're escalating up to $320,000?
No, Bobby, it just happens the numbers are kind of close.
Okay.
I'm just saying that they're gonna say, well, you said when you did this grant application that you would come up with that cash,
Okay.
and you would not have to do, I don't think any way you'd have to do both. It would be one, would be my expectation.
So what you're saying, if they've done any work whatsoever up there, they can subtract from that number for the money that they'd have to get back? Is that my correct in thinking that?
No, I think that you have to complete the project. So unless you completely get the project done, they're gonna come back to you for anything they've given. That's what's in the resolution.
What's complete, just what we go out to bid with, or do we actually have to have a finished building that's what we can occupy?
That,
That's a good question.
yes, it has to be a finished building that people can occupy. But we've tried to trim it down as much as we can. So it has to be able to be occupied. And that, again, trying to get DOT on record about what if, the work is done and you can't paint, because the weather won't let you paint.
I was gonna say, is it just a cert for occupancy that says that we can occupy it and then it's done?
It's there, I think it's DOT's standard of what means the building's done. So for example, they told us non-essential interior doors. You don't have to do that. Well, thank you. Good to know. Not gonna trim an awful lot off the cost of the project, but, that's the kind of thing we can look at. Because they do, they're a party to the contract too, they need to help us be successful in getting this done.
We need to schedule a meeting then with you.
Sounds good.
Probably have to be with the whole board.
And I would, I would really urge that, we have Brian there and Arsen and Carol and anyone else that you feel needs to be put input in. Then it's so important, to have everybody share what they know at that, so you can make a good decision.
Really available by telephone? Really available by telephone? I don't think we're trying to wait for them to come back.
You can't do that.
We'll have to just go with forward, and have a meeting and whoever else we need and as quick as we can. When's good for you? What's better on your schedule?
Oh, did you want to try to do it this week? Or,
Within the
I'll
week.
tell you what, why don't I send you, Bumper, some dates, some times and dates that work for me, we'll try to get it scheduled as soon as possible, and then maybe we can, I don't know if you want to bring, maybe we talk first and then we get DOT in a couple days later to get their thoughts, okay? Now, the last thing I have is that, purposefully, the last board waited for the new board to come in to make some decisions. And one of those, obviously, is the railroad grant, but also in terms of my contract. So if you wanted me to stick around for an executive session, I would be glad to do that. If you want to wait till another night, that's fine too.
We're gonna be late, unfortunately.
Okay, but you do know, you've been read in the reports that we're over the 19,000. I wanted to be sure you were aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna go sit down and make my notes.
Right, and if you can send, when you send times or dates you wanna have the meeting, we got Brad and Becky at work, so
Okay.
we gotta try and work around them.
Okay, 4:30, okay, for a start? Does that work? I'll send things, send times after 4:30 then.
Oh, is that open to the public?
What's that?
If the whole board meets, it would be,
Yeah.
I think it was funny,
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for listening.
All right. Bid results. I marked this, or,
You want me to read it?
yeah, go ahead.
Bids were received and opened by the deputy clerk and deputy treasurer. Slack Chemical came in at $13,110.55. And Aftac Incorporated came in at $14,697. This is for the diatomaceous earth that they use in the water plant. And Gary recommends that you go with the $13,000 for Slack Chemical.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid results and award it to Slack Chemical for $13,100.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? There being no discussion, that's all answered by sign about it.
Aye.
All right. So, comments from the public? John?
This is directed to you solely.
Yep.
At the beginning of the meeting, you apologized for something that you said in the last budget meeting.
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate on what you said?
It's under litigation. We've been advised by the attorney, we can't talk
Well,
about it.
let me just make the public aware,
Go ahead.
okay, that I had requested for you. And Carol has had a copy of that. But what's alleged at the last meeting, coming from the mayor, Mr. Baker, that, I'm not gonna say this verbatim because I don't have the exact wording, but I listened to the tape along with Mr. Baker and with the clerk, Carol Hanfield. During the, and we're, obviously, I don't have all the meetings, but the interesting part about this is if you want, and we're talking about, must be talking about Chief Bingle's job during the discussion of the budget. If you want Mike back in there, I've been watching Bingle pick up birds in the Durango and go play golf at Bluff Point. Now, would that be the statement that you're apologizing about?
Yes, it is.
So, we have, well, I guess I would have to allege at this point that during a budget meeting, and I don't know if any other residents of the village heard this, but they're questioning, I would assume, that whether or not they're gonna keep Michael's position, or Mr. Ringo's position, who's the chief, working part-time. Now, we have two new trustees here, and I see later on you're gonna have a executive session regarding police personnel. Now, I don't know if the budget hasn't been passed, I don't believe, right? And there might be, there's gonna be two new trustees that are gonna be, or have been fed misinformation about what happened in the police department. And we know that these are not true. Now, regardless if you decide to cut the position or not, your newly appointed mayor has made false accusations and has lied to the budget, to the board, in the public. So, some of you might not think that this is very important, but you just accused an official of an official misconduct, which is a crime in New York State. Not only did you accuse him of this, but you also made me a part of the conspiracy. So, I want the village, and this should be made public, because it is a public hearing, that we've created a hostile work environment for our people to work in. And while my friend was on vacation, it's alleged that other people went into the police department and tried to take records out of the police department for whatever reason, I don't know, but tried to intimidate the remaining patrol officer that's in the office. And furthermore, a statement was made that if the patrolman did not write speeding tickets and stop sign tickets, that brings in revenue to the village, that he should be worried about his personal job.
That wasn't said by
Well,
us.
I'm not saying it was you, I'm just saying that the first part of this allegation is an untruth coming directly from you.
Yes, and I apologize to you. I've done that 4 or 5 times.
Well-
And I apologize to Mike. Just so you know.
I'm afraid that it's gonna go further than that.
Well, if it does,
We can't talk about that anymore.
We won't talk about that anymore, you're right, but I just want the residents of this village to know what this newly appointed board is doing. And there's hostility in Orford, and I would not have believed it unless I saw it in my own eyes today. When I was meeting with you and with Carol Hanfield, who had every right to be there, in a meeting, in burst Trustee Jefferson, and demanded that she leave the office in which she has every entitlement in being there. And the reason I asked her there is to take notes so you and I wouldn't get into a confrontation as to what was going on in the allegations. And you and I conducted a very good talk or discussion. And we were reviewing the tape, and which I had asked on Friday for Carol to make sure that she wasn't doing anything illegal, that I wanted a copy of the tape so I could hear it myself. She called Nikon, they said that I could go in the office, and I could listen to the tape, which we were in the process of doing. And then we stopped, and we were rudely interrupted by Trustee Jefferson. And he accused her of not being on the same team as he was. And she left that office crying. It's fear and intimidation that I don't think any of us in the village want to see coming from our board. And that's what I have to say.
Did you ask, when did you ask for the tape, John? What day?
Friday.
Oh, Friday, oh, okay, because it came out today, this just came up
You
today.
didn't give me a chance to talk, Brian, all you did is yell at me.
Oh, I did? Oh, did I tell you?
What do you call it? We were having a quiet discussion? No, but I'm not going that way.
We're not gonna go there because it's pending litigation, and our attorneys told us not to talk about it.
Right,
Okay?
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Public mic, go ahead.
I want to inquire about my employment status with the village, because while I was away, there was a board member, Mr. Jefferson, who came and advised a staff member of mine that I no longer work there. And he asked the staff member to go into my desk looking for my office keys. So I want to know what my employment status is with the village, and is this a day-by-day thing, or do I have a date that I'm going to be furnished with? And the second part of this is that I'd like to comment on what Mr. Burt said, but I've been advised by my attorney not to do so, so I will refrain from that.
Well, first of all, the budget meeting that night, we voted to let you go.
We're gonna have an executive session tonight, we'll be able to give you an answer shortly, probably tomorrow.
Okay?
You have any other questions?
That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting, regular meeting of April 2nd, 2012. You all have copies of the meeting?
Is that the end of public comment?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You want to say something, Pat?
No, I wanted to know if there was a chance for other people to speak.
I didn't see anybody raising their hand, so I just tried to go on. Oh, Walt, go ahead.
I would like to say that I am very upset with the present administration of the board being elected membership. When they campaigned, I was told point blank by at least 3 people created for running for office, that they weren't gonna make any hasty decisions, that they were gonna sit down and look the situation over, give it some time and see how things work. Within days of being sworn in, they're making extremely hasty decisions. My personal opinion is a lot of them are not founded on fact. I'm hearing a lot of rumors, and I won't try to come out with any definite things because of what I'm hearing is rumors. What I'm saying is I caution the board that maybe before you start making decisions to really cut, that you start thinking about all the ramifications. And you need all the ramifications.
Thank you, Walt. Anyone else? Okay, minutes of the previous meeting, regular meeting of April 2nd, 2012. No last copies?
Yes.
Need a motion.
Motion to dispense with the reading of the previous meeting, minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second that motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, any discussions? Any no discussions? All answered by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Okay, the special budget meeting of April 10th, 2012. This is the ratification. Right. Except that we have to accept the motion for that special meeting, budget meeting.
Okay, you made a motion to accept the regular meeting and the special budget meeting, and I second it.
All right. Any discussions? Any no discussions? All right.
Aye.
Okay. Bills, you all got a copy of the bills?